Phantom or Vandal? This is a question that's plagued the Valorant community ever since the game's been released. There are a ton of videos regarding this topic of debate, as well as how to use each gun, but what about how to not use each gun? The Phantom and Vandal each have their own pros and cons, thus requiring different methods of usage. For the Phantom specifically, we've found 10 mistakes that players are making with the weapon which are ruining their aim. These mistakes are hard to identify and work on fixing unless you're actively seeking them in relation to the Phantom. This is why we've done the work for you. Let's break down each one of these mistakes with the Phantom and how you can get cracking on fixing them and getting the aim you've always dreamed of. Jumping right into it, we have crosshair placement. If you've watched previous Valorant guides, you've probably heard the old saying to aim for the head. And this is absolutely true. Headshots give more damage, so duh, I want to go for the headshots. Well, what if I told you that's not quite the case for certain situations with the Phantom? Now let's get this straight first. At close and mid-range fights, meaning those between 0 to 30 meters, you want to have your crosshair placed straight for the head. At these ranges, a headshot will either one-shot kill for 156 at 0 to 15 meters or will deal 140 at 15 to 30 meters. No biggie if the enemy is a bit too far from the one-shot headshot radius, as you'll likely be able to get another shot in at the head or body by pulling your crosshair straight down. Now for longer ranges beyond 30 meters, particularly if you're towards the 50 meter mark like you would be for this fight down mid on ascent, you want to actually aim more towards the neck. The reasoning for this is because at the longer ranges, the recoil with the Phantom is going to be much harder to control. If we aim right for the head, there's a good chance we end up missing or headshotting a player but then landing our next few bullets a bit too high. This results in us taking further bullets to finally hit that second headshot or body shot, but by that time it may be too late and you'll be dead. Instead, a better method to increase our chances of landing the kill is by aiming more towards the player's neck. This gives us a greater probability of not only landing an initial body shot or headshot, but also landing a second shot afterwards. Because the Phantom doesn't one-shot headshot, this placement will increase the odds that we get those 2 shots in, with one of them being a juicy headshot. Now for more experienced players that are highly ranked, you may not need to do this tip if you are confident in your aim and recoil control. For those guys, they're able to accurately land and control their shots from long distances, thus they can maintain crosshair placement at the head and precisely pull the trigger to get that second shot quite quickly. For the rest of the pack though, we found this tip of placing the crosshair at the neck at long ranges to be extremely effective and helpful at winning those difficult duels. So make sure to give this a try and let us know in the comments below how it goes. Going right along with that tip, another big mistake we see players making with the Phantom is positioning and playstyle. With the Phantom's damage drop off, you ideally want to play in positions where you have a high probability of fighting players within 0 to 30 meters. Of course, those long range duels we just talked about are not going to be completely avoidable, but they should be a low percentage of your engagements. Always aim to be up close and personal with the Phantom. For example, if you're defending the A site on ascent, some good positions you may want to consider are tree to watch cat or close the door to watch the A long push. Another great position is beside the boxes outside B long. All these positions give you an engagement that is within the 0 to 30 meter range that we talked about, thus giving you the most damage and easiest duels you can get with the Phantom. On the other spectrum, trying to challenge links from cat or fighting down mid to top mid are not optimal fights to be getting into. At these ranges, the Phantom's damage drop off is at its max, and along with the recoil being hard to control at these ranges, you're going to have a much harder time landing those shots. If you end up facing a player with a Vandal or Operator, you're going to be in a very big disadvantage. Even dueling against a Marshal or Sheriff could be quite risky from these distances. The zoom and mobility of these weapons will make enemies a slippery target. This along with the fact that it's going to be difficult to land shots with the Phantom at these ranges, so a Marshal player has a decent chance of jiggling in and out of these angles and landing a headshot or 2 body shots before you can. Remember, long range duels should be a minority, so try to avoid putting yourself into situations where you have to go for such fights. We're going to jump into our third mistake and tip in just a moment, but if you want to truly improve your Valorant skills and climb up to Radiant, then you want to check out our website at SkillCapped.com. On our website, we have multiple comprehensive guides and courses on various aspects of the game. If you want to learn a certain agent like Chamber to the fullest level, we got that covered. Or perhaps you want to truly master the Phantom and the Vandal. We got that covered as well, and so much more. We guarantee you're going to see significant improvements quickly, so if you're interested in taking your game to the next level, the link will be provided in the description below. Going right along, a huge mistake we notice players making with the Phantom is pushing too aggressively. Now I know, we just talked about trying to position yourself up close and personal to minimize damage drop off from the Phantom, but a common trend we notice is that players try to force themselves into those positions at the wrong times. For example, because long range duels are not favorable and comfortable for a Phantom, players will try to close the gap as soon as possible. A common situation is in top mid on ascent, where players will try to rush down cat or mid to get into closer quarters. What ends up happening though is while pushing down those choke points, you end up exposed to multiple angles. In this scenario, we could get hit from a double push from middle and cat, giving us a very unfair fight where we will probably get eliminated if we don't hit an insane flick shot. Point being, don't get too hasty. Even though we want to close the distance as soon as possible, we still want to make sure that we set ourselves up properly to do so. This means working thoroughly, checking our angles, and waiting for the coast to be clear or for your utility to drop prior to going for that desired push. This next mistake is one that you've probably heard about, yet we see time and time again that several players will continue to use it, and yes, that is aiming down sights, or ADS for short. For those who aren't aware, each rifle in Valorant has an ADS feature where you can right click and zoom in towards a target. Now without a doubt, this gives you better vision of the enemy, but it comes at a big cost. The biggest being that the rate of fire decreases from 11 rounds per second to 9.9 rounds per second. This also changes how quickly or slowly you want to pull down your aim to control the recoil. With these factors together, your aim is going to feel off and be all over the place. A majority of players do already know these facts, yet we still see them using ADS on the Phantom. While in the short term this may feel like it's worth it as the zoom can make it easier to land shots, the rate of fire and recoil will end up taking much longer to kill your enemies than if you were to simply use hip fire. Even if it may feel tempting to ADS mid and long ranges, avoid it at all costs. When you end up playing with the big boys and girls, if you choose the ADS, you will absolutely get obliterated. Take advantage of the increased firing rate and better recoil control from hip firing. And with practice, those normal duels where you feel like you need the help of ADS will be a piece of cake. Chugging along, one mistake that may be the reason for the previous mistake is players relying too much on spraying with the Phantom. Now the Phantom does have 5 extra bullets from the Vandal, that means we have more leeway to spray away at enemies, right? No, no, no. Regardless of whether you're using Phantom or Vandal, you always want to go for quality over quantity. For every duel you want the player dead within your first few bullets. As a rule of thumb, they should be eliminated by 10 bullets. Any more than that and the recoil of the Phantom will go haywire. The further you spray, the crazier the recoil gets, as there is a bit of randomness involved in the recoil pattern. This means you won't be able to master a full spray with the Phantom, you're just going to be playing with RNG. If you shot your first 10 bullets at the enemy and they're not dead yet, stop. Stop spraying, let the Phantom's recoil reset, and then spray again. Shooting in bursts like this will greatly improve the Phantom's accuracy and avoid you from having to deal with hectic, variable spray patterns. Practice bursting instead of a full spray and you'll find yourself way more accurate and getting more kills than you were before. You're trying to down an enemy with all 30 bullets at once, praying that something lands. While talking about spraying, a common habit that players have with the Phantom is they'll start to move after they whiff their first few shots. This is referred to panic spraying. Our initial few bullets don't kill the enemy and now we're thinking, oh shoot, I'm going to lose this duel. An instinctive maneuver is to move mid-spray and attempt to A, make ourselves a harder target, and B, to get the heck out of this duel. Movement greatly increases in accuracy, so what ends up happening here is you missed your first shots and now you move and are significantly making it harder to land any other shots. If you're close to a wall that allows you to escape, this can be an okay thing to do. However, if you're nowhere close to cover, the movement is going to put you in further trouble. You likely won't be able to escape in time before the enemy kills you, and now by moving, you further reduce your odds of killing them first. If you have no way to hide, commit to the fight. Stand your ground and shoot those burst shots that we just talked about. If you need to stop your burst for the recoil to reset, then that's a good time to strafe to the side to change up your positioning before shooting again. With this implementation, you avoid the inaccuracy of moving while shooting. A habit that's all too common in the lower rankings with the Phantom as well as other weapons is reloading too much. For many new players, it may be intuitive to try to reload after every duel. You want to have as many bullets as possible so that you never run out before a fight is done. This becomes an excessive habit where players will even reload after shooting no more than 5 or 6 bullets with the Phantom for fear that not having those bullets could be costly in the long run. This becomes an issue when players try to reload their Phantom, the enemy team is already pushing towards them. This leads to the enemy getting shots on you before you can completely reload, or you end up shooting later than you would have liked as the enemy had already showed up on your screen a second or two ago. You're likely going to be more panicked if the enemy pops up on your screen and you're still reloading. As a result, you end up panic spraying without properly setting your aim up. If the enemy is close by or even has a chance of popping up while you're reloading, don't do it. Even if you have 10 bullets remaining in the clip, hold onto it and prepare to mow down the enemy with those 10 bullets. You're better off trying to go for the kill with what you have left, rather than reloading at that point where you don't have time to. We mentioned earlier about positioning and playstyle with the Phantom. A misinterpretation that players can have with this information is that they can only play a select number of close range positions. As such, they repeatedly play those 1 or 2 positions for the entire half. This leads to them being far too predictable. If you play the same spot every round, players will know where to pre-aim their crosshair or where they need to throw abilities to mess up your aim. We recommend switching up your position every single round. This doesn't mean that you can't use the same position twice, but don't use it 2 rounds in a row if the enemy had already spotted you out in the round prior. You don't have to make very drastic position changes either. For example, if we've been holding garage at market the round prior, we could simply switch things up by dropping down the logs or by playing in the small stairway. you're in essentially the same choke point but at a different angle that may catch the enemy off guard. This messes up their crosshair while you still have yours well positioned to pick them off. That, along with the fact that you still maintain the optimal range for the Phantom to deal the most amount of damage. You can of course make drastic changes to repositioning the spawn or to the backup B site. Point being, be less predictable and keep the enemies guessing on where you may be. Now at the lower rankings, we don't see Phantom players taking advantage of bullet tracers. Besides the Phantom and Ghost, every weapon in Valorant will leave behind an animation indicating where the weapon was shot from. Particularly when enemies shoot through smokes, you'll be able to clearly identify where the bullets were shot. If we take this information and have a Phantom, we can easily shoot the enemy back for free if we can see them through walls. The Phantom does not leave these traces behind, meaning the enemy won't be able to track you down, or you can track them and deal some deadly damage. This is a very safe way to precisely aim at enemies through smoke without risking getting shot back in the same fashion. Last but not least, a mistake we see from Phantom players is not using abilities enough. Like we mentioned earlier, you want to get into close quarter duels. What happens in these scenarios though is players feeling like they don't have time to use abilities prior to getting into the action. The other thought is that enemies are too close to you now, so you don't want to risk taking out an ability at the same time that the enemy decides to peek you. Other than good positioning, ability usage is one of the few ways you can make a duel more favorable to you. Being able to throw that extra smoke or flash could be a huge difference in whether you can cleanly push and clear out a site. A few ways to make sure you don't get messed up by timing is to throw the ability a bit early. This will decrease the time that the ability will be up for though. The other more effective option is communicating to your teammates to watch your back as you prepare to use your abilities close to the choke point of contention. That way if anything happens, your teammate can pick off the player and you can confidently whip out and use your abilities prior to getting into the action. That's all we have for today's video. For all you Phantom mains, review your gameplay and make sure you aren't consistently making these same mistakes. If you are though, try these tips out to get yourself back in the right direction. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to help support us. I'm Dr. Zora and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching and we'll catch you in the next one.